get so wrapped up in the planning, you just got to go. You've got to jump.
Yep, and I think that's still something I struggle with sometimes even today, is I am planning so much and I won't do the jump. I definitely have things in the pipeline where I got to get going on
this. This is Mike Bassett, and welcome to Legal Grounds, conversations on life, leadership, and law. One of the things we talk about frequently on this podcast are the struggles that come with always thinking like a lawyer. Sometimes it's in the reference to generating out-of-the-box ideas. Other times it's part of a larger topic like seeing the world in 6-minute increments, or the difference between the skills learned in law school and those needed to actually practice law. And at its worst, it can creep into your personal life, which is why nearly every attorney can tell you about a time when they tried to settle a heated emotional disagreement with cold legal logic. But as frustrating and frankly exhausting as it can be to process the world through the lens of potential litigation, I suspect at the end of the day, many of us stick with the profession because it's one of the few careers which not only requires curiosity, but encourages it. Now, some others that come to mind were journalism, scientific research, and engineering, and so it shouldn't come as a shock to say that the laws that govern those things, such as freedom of speech, medical ethics, and patenting new technologies, become exponentially more complex and specialized. It's like having to be curious about being curious while still coming to a conclusion. And if that sounds confusing, then you're hearing it right. Now, that's not to say the kind of work other attorneys do is simple, but using myself as an example, no matter how catastrophic or chaotic some of the cases I've seen in my career may have been, there are only so many ways an accident involving two vehicles can happen. Thankfully, our legal system recognizes this dance between curiosity and complexity, which is why, as non-legal listeners may not know, in order to qualify to even take the patent bar, an applicant must have a background in the field of science, technology, engineering, or math. Now, to someone outside the profession, this could seem like intellectual gatekeeping, but its practical purpose is to protect clients and keep the system moving forward. But in getting ready for this week's episode, I was struck by, and a little jealous of, what I think is an unattended, though positive consequence of this requirement. Attorneys like my guest today literally have to specialize in being able to not think like an attorney. Or put more eloquently, they have to be grounded enough in two worlds to piece together abstractions from both. Suraj Vyas is an attorney specializing in patent law with a focus on construction and contracts. Having spent the last 6 years on the Super Lawyers Rising Star list, Suraj began his legal career as in-house counsel for Rising Sun Engineering before founding his own firm in 2018. Suraj developed an interest in construction work at a young age, pursuing an undergraduate degree in water resources management and policy, but his interdisciplinary interests would lead him to follow in his grandfather's footsteps, combining a love of engineering with the law. Now, with nearly a decade of practice beneath his belt, Suraj is as committed to helping his communities as he is his clients, frequently providing pro bono services in legal education, community health, and disability rights. And I couldn't be happier to have him here with me today. Suraj Vyas, welcome to Legal Grounds.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here.
I know from the research my folks put together that you grew up in Maryland. So what is it like growing up on the East Coast?
Oh, man. It's definitely a different way of life than I think a lot of other areas of the country. I think a lot of people are familiar with New York always being so quick-paced and, no one's really stopping to say hello. And I will say I think it was a little similar in Maryland. Not that, it's unfriendly per se, but definitely that there's a different speed that people like to move at.
A lot different than, say, they do in the South, I suspect.
Perhaps.
I know, in your words, you were obsessed with construction from an early age. But do you think growing up so close to the nation's capital may have influenced your decision to become an attorney or not?
I'm not sure. That's actually an extremely interesting question. I don't think I've ever been posed that. I've never really thought about it, but perhaps subconsciously. I mean, it did kind of invade my mind in that way. You're always seeing these great structures, these wonderful trips that you take through school trips. Yeah, I think it would be impossible not to let that have an influence on you in some way.
And I want to talk about that interest in construction. Was that something, as I thought about it this morning, was that something that was fostered by people around you or something that you wouldn't let go of, or was it a little bit of both?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both. I think growing up, it began as an early age. Just when you're a child, you play with Duplo and then eventually Legos. And, I think every kid is into them to somewhat of a degree. But I think my interest in that definitely was over and above a lot of other children.
And how do you think that those early experiences, like your internship in high school, prepared you for the kind of work you're doing today?
Sure. So the internship I had in high school was at a construction firm. It was a general contractor. They did projects all around the East Coast, but primarily the tri-state area of the DMV area of DC, Maryland, and Virginia. I think I really got to see how a general contractor operates and really see the construction side of things and what now my clients actually experience.
So let's talk about your grandfather, because I can tell from the research my folks put together that he is a huge hero and mentor to you. So tell us about your grandfather and what impact his trajectory had on your trajectory.
Yeah, definitely. That's wonderful. I love talking about him. He's been a positive role model my whole life, since until his passing, and even after. But his career really began. He was an engineer in India, a civil engineer, and his company actually got into a bit of a legal bind. And when that happened, he was paying all these attorney's fees to try and get him out of it. And my grandmother actually told him, we're spending a lot of money. You're an intelligent guy. Why don't you learn how to fight this case on your own? And that's what he did. He got his law degree in India, and he actually fought his own case, and that's kind of where his love for the law began.
Now, and we're not talking about a guy that went back to law school at the age of 30. How old was your grandfather when he got his law degree?
Oh, man. Well, when he got his LLM, I know he was in his 70s or 80s, but I think before that in India, he was probably in his mid-40s, I think.
So somebody mid-career goes back, gets a law degree, and then goes and gets a master's in the seventh decade of life.
That's right, yeah. I hope I'm still that active, when I'm that old.
And do you think that, I guess, love for, being curious and that embracing education, I know you spent summers in India, do you think that rubbed off on you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, as far as my personal values go, I think education is paramount. I mean, I think that is above all else. It's always good to prioritize education. And that's always been something that's been instilled in me since a young age, and I definitely carry that with me today.
You have this intense passion for engineering, and you're clearly talented at it, but you get to college and decide to go the interdisciplinary route. Why make that switch? And was that decision to go to law school a part of the interdisciplinary route or a product of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of it was that I knew at that stage that I wanted to really embrace the legal side of engineering. And so an interdisciplinary degree kind of allowed me to explore that option, because I wasn't just taking engineering classes. It was kind of a mixed bag of various topics, especially the legal ones.
And I noticed in something I read or an interview you gave that you kind of come to this conclusion about not being pigeonholed or placed in a certain area while you're in college. And I think a lot of times when people are in college, they're just trying to figure out where they're going to a party this weekend. What were you thinking when you thought, getting this degree in this field is limiting? What were you thinking?
Yeah, it's tough to say and put myself back in those shoes. I think it was just a matter of, I know I want to go to law school, and I know a lot of people take, they'll do majors in English or history typically. But then I really thought about it, and I said, I'm really interested in construction and engineering. So even if I go to law school, I want to do something related to that field, like construction law. And so to really meld those two, I guess, disciplines together, there really was no other option. This is what I had to do.
In getting ready for this episode, I was sharing with my wife kind of what I touched on in the opening, and that's how I'm really in awe of people who have that gift for engineering, because my brain just doesn't click on that kind of material. And as she and I were talking, I realized the thing that was frustrating me wasn't that I didn't understand it. It was wanting to understand because I love to know how things work. And I'm wondering if that's where the Venn diagram, for lawyer and engineer overlap in what you do.
Right, I definitely think so. And I know you touched on it earlier with the curiosity piece. I think that definitely has a lot to do with it. Honestly, you bring up how things work, and that actually triggered a memory in my mind where I received a CD-ROM, I must have been 7 or 8, that I would put into my computer, and it was literally called How Things Work. I want to say it was 2.0, and it was just this guy, I don't know his name anymore, but he would just explain how all these random things worked, from engines to wastewater plants, you name it. And that always just piqued my interest. I always am curious. I just have that curious mind.
I don't know, there is a show out there, and I don't know what platform it's on, but How Things Work or How They Build Things. And I found myself one time watching how they build refrigerators. I was fascinated for 30 minutes.
Right. I think I totally get that. I mean, once you really see the inner workings of a lot of things, I think anything really can be fascinating as long as you're open to it.
Now, so if somebody has a passion for and training in both engineering and law, what do these two professions share, and what could they stand to learn from each other? So kind of two questions in one.
Sure. I think, they're both very analytical. And depending on the sphere of engineering you practice, I think you'll see maybe it's more analytical or less analytical. But that is definitely the biggest takeaway. I think they are both rooted in logic. I think, there's not too much ambiguity on either side, even though, of course, the law always has the gray area of specific facts. But, the black letter law is the black letter law.
Right. And I think that now I'm a self-confessed non-engineer, but I think one of the things I love about being a lawyer is it just causes you or trains you to think differently. Sometimes that's a blessing and sometimes that's a curse, because we can sit and listen to something and then pick it apart because that's the way our minds are. In engineering, though, my guess is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are looking to solve a problem. You don't have somebody on the other side trying to unsolve the problem for you at the same time, right?
Right, absolutely. Other than the laws of physics sometimes, but absolutely, you're right.
Okay, now, when you graduate from law school, you actually took a fairly non-traditional first step out of the gate, and you went for in-house counsel. And I looked it up out of curiosity, and only about 2% of graduates pursue an in-house track straight out of school. So since it's graduation season, what's your pitch to a newly minted attorney if they're really thinking of going in-house?
Oh man, I think now it is a lot more competitive than even just in that pre-COVID era. I really do think there's been a large shift, especially at least as a construction company, being an in-house counsel for one of those. I think the biggest skills you need, though, outside of actually knowing the law, is being organized. I think being organized and showing that you are someone who is organized and punctual, I think that goes a long way for these bigger companies. Because they really just want someone who can solve their problems. They don't necessarily need to know every nitty-gritty bit of the law. That's something you can handle, and you'll have developed that through law school and honestly through some CLEs, I think, because you're not always, taught everything in law school.
So what are some of the questions these young lawyers need to be asking, Suraj, as they continue or consider going in-house? What are the questions they need to know or be asking about?
Yeah, I think one is this the lifestyle I want? Is this the type of client I want to serve? Because as you know, I mean, in your field, I think it's extremely difficult from litigation. I mean, it's a whole different career almost in terms of what you're really doing day to day. So I think one is, really asking yourself, is that the type of lifestyle you want? Is that the client you want to work with day in and day out? I think that's a big one.
What drew you to the opportunity and what kept you there until you decided to launch your own practice?
Yeah, I think one is really just my background in engineering. It was something where I definitely wanted to help construction companies. And then as far as really, I guess, building a connection with one specific firm that was really appealing to me because I feel like I could get to know everyone on the team, really make a difference in this company and how they work. Um, I didn't feel at the time that maybe being able to work that way with a ton of different clients was really going to be the best way I could contribute to the construction world.
So before we talk about founding your own firm and the work you're doing now, when you first began practicing, who were one of the two mentors that helped you make that jump from learning about the law in law school to actually applying it?
Sure. So, I mean, we talked about my grandfather earlier. That was absolutely the number one supporter right there. I mean, anything I needed, he was there. Whether it's the actual legal knowledge, because he was trained in Maryland and DC law, I should say. So it was whether it was the legal knowledge or honestly just the administrative or emotional support I needed at the time, he was there. I think that is absolutely the number one person I would want to mention.
And I know you had a judicial clerkship at one point. Now, was that before or after graduating law school?
So that was before graduating law school. That was actually in my 1L summer between first and second year.
And what lessons did you learn there, Suraj, that you now use today?
I think that was extremely important because it taught me how to write in a way that judges would actually want to understand. I think that's something where, not to maybe dissuade people from going straight to a firm or something like that, but I think working under a judge is extremely helpful in just knowing how they think, and when they see a case, what are they looking for? Because that'll definitely help you on the other side when you're actually a practicing attorney before that judge or any judge.
I know you've told this story in other interviews, but would you mind sharing with our listeners the unlikely series of events that led you to deciding to hang out your own shingle?
Sure, absolutely. It's definitely not the usual story. So I was working at in-house counsel for that engineering firm, and over the years, in summers, I would visit India, and that had me develop a lot of relationships over there because I would work actually with my grandfather and his clients. Not super hands-on, but would definitely be involved enough. And so I had an old friend, or almost an old client, I guess, from way back when, who was doing some work in Maryland, and he had a legal issue come up. And so he reached out to me, and I told him, I'd love to help, but I'm just in a very different position. I'm working as an in-house counsel. It's not really something where I'm able to take this on. And, he told me, look, this is the issue. This is what we're facing. This is kind of, he went into a little bit more of the specifics, and, I just thought about it overnight, really. And I was like, okay, just give me some time. I'm going to work something out. And that's kind of what I did. I just did some Googling around, figured out how to set up an LLC, get the legal malpractice insurance. And I think within 5 days, maybe, I had the firm up and running.
Wow. That's got to be a world record.
Yeah, I don't know. But it was definitely something.
So something that crossed my mind when I was getting ready for today's show is that you've had 3 first days in the decade or so you've been practicing. You had your first day when you graduated. You had your first day when you decided to open your own firm. And then once again, you had your first day when you had to go all virtual during the pandemic. And so while every lawyer listening has started from scratch at the beginning of their career, what have you learned that you don't think you would have had you not decided to take those risks and have those 3 first days?
Wow, yeah, I think, man, it's the first day of the legal career is really just, that's a shock to anyone. When you really get out there and what you learned in law school is really not what you have to do out there. It's a whole different world. So I think, what didn't I learn when it comes to actually becoming an attorney? And then, when I really made the firm, I think one of the misconceptions I actually had was that, I'll have all this free time, I can set my own hours, and, admin work, that's probably not a big deal. That won't take too long. And I quickly learned that, yep, this is where the organization comes in. This is where the punctuality comes in. That admin work, I really didn't expect that. So I think I learned a lot about how to learn, or how to, I guess, operate every little bit of the law firm starting out.
And I'm going to come back to planning because I'm a huge proponent of that. Do you look back now and think, what? I have had these 3 first days. Do you think that has emboldened you and made you more confident and maybe not shy away from risks as they come up now in your practice?
I do think that. Again, I think this is another wonderful question where I've never thought of it that way, but I absolutely think that it has made me someone who is a lot more confident, especially at least from my professional standpoint. I think I'm a lot more willing to take certain risks, calculated risks, I should say.
Sure.
But absolutely.
Yeah, because I'm sure in the back of your mind you'll be thinking about doing something or going down a certain path. And at some point you're like, hold on, I've started my own damn law firm. This is not that hard.
Right.
Compared to that. Okay, so let's go back to planning, because I am a huge proponent of plan your work and work your plan. And I tell young lawyers all the time, I probably spend 5 or 6 hours a week planning. And in a world, Suraj, where we get paid by the billable hour, people think, well, that's stupid. Why are you wasting 5 or 6 precious hours planning? And my response is, because I can bill 12 more hours in a month than you can by planning 5 or 6 hours a week. Has that been your experience?
Yes, absolutely. I love that. I mean, that is exactly how I operate. You should, well, it's confidential, but you should see my Google Calendar, and my Asana to-do list. It is absolutely all about planning and making sure you have all your ducks lined up in a row, and then you just knock them down as the week goes.
I know earlier in an interview that you gave, you talked about Trello and all of the other tools out there. Have you found that your planning in your organization has sort of grown and morphed with time and as you've matured in your practice?
Yes, I think so. And I think one of the biggest aspects of that is really just understanding what is important and what isn't. It's really just filtering what are the bare essentials I need for this day or this case, or do I really need to do a deep dive into this topic? And I think that's also something I had to do as my case and as my firm grew, because, more clients come in and you really need to learn to prioritize and how to manage your time better.
All right. So I think a lot of folks picked up at least 1 or 2 new skills during the pandemic. And I even know a couple of attorneys who got pretty damn good at cooking and one that learned a new language. But I don't know anybody who would have put studying for the fundamentals of an engineering exam on their plate while running a law firm and preparing for a wedding. So for those attorneys considering it, and folks really in general, what was it like studying for that on top of the patent bar, my friend? What was that like?
Yeah, so it was actually a bit of a rude awakening because, I was so gung-ho and ready to take the patent bar. And that's when I realized, oh, you know what? The water resources and management degree actually wouldn't qualify. And so that's when I thought to myself, well, I know this engineering stuff. I guess the degree is just written wrong, so I'll just go ahead and take the exam. But man, that was quite the time, doing all those things. It was a lot of balancing.
And so how long was it? Was it a full year or just a number of months that you were sort of in that crucible?
Well, I think the FE was about 3 months or so of studying. The patent bar was maybe another month or 2. And then, throw in some dashes of wedding planning here and there as well.
So how long was the patent bar? How many days?
Patent bar is 1 day. Yep.
And then
So
how long do you have to wait for your results?
Oh man, I don't even remember how long that must have been. I think it was a couple of months. So I don't believe it was immediate.
All right, because I know here in Texas it used to be 4 months or 5 months.
Okay.
Now if you take the exam at the end of July, I think now they're getting results the middle of October.
Okay.
But you're thinking just a couple months before you got your results?
I believe so. To be honest, that whole time is a complete
blur.
It was the FE straight to the patent bar, and then the wedding. It was all just kind of back to back to back.
So you've already beat the 5-year statistic for opening a small business, and you're quickly approaching the decade mark of practicing. So first, congratulations. Good on you.
Thank you.
And second, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, if you could go back and give yourself 1 or 2 pieces of advice as you were sitting there waiting for the ink to dry on your diploma, what would they be?
Man, I mean, I have so many answers. I guess I have the practical answers of actually learning the law firm side of things. I think very practically, number one, I would say just start accepting credit cards. Just bite the bullet. I know it's a fee. I know we're starting off small, but just get that law pay going and it'll make things so much more streamlined. I think that's a good practical step.
That's a good nugget of advice.
Right, right. And I think from more like a philosophical standpoint, I think I would say really just take the leap. I mean, believe in yourself. As soon as you have that inkling that, I really do think I can do it, just do it. You can. I mean, and you will figure it out.
And I think we can, if you're a planner and a control freak like I am, sometimes you can get so wrapped up in the planning, you just got to go. You've got to jump.
Yep, and I think that's still something I struggle with sometimes, even today, is I am planning so much and I won't do the jump. I definitely have things in the pipeline where I got to get going on this, and I just haven't yet.
And so here's the inevitable curveball question. If you could go back to last month and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
The last month.
Aha.
Wow. It's so it's an interesting time because the last month actually was my wife and I actually moved in with my parents or I should say moved into their home while they were in India to do some paperwork and items over there they had to take care of. And so it was me, my wife, and my grandmother and our dog all staying in their home. And so over the last month, it's been a lot of just planning to make sure, there's no interruptions during meetings and things like that. The advice I would give myself is just leave more time than you think to plan out my grandmother's medications or foods and things like that. I think that's what I would say.
Pack your patience.
Yep.
Okay, so as we start to wrap up the show today, I noticed that you've given a good amount of your time for pro bono work in the community and across a variety of causes. So my first question is, why give your time away when anybody looking at your CV would say, this dude already does a lot? Why?
I think there's just something, I guess, just ingrained in me that I have this platform and I should use it to give back in whatever way I can. And I want to be a realist about that. It's not that I'm giving away thousands of hours all the time to, anyone who walks in through the door, but I think making particular decisions about people you can help who are clearly down on their luck or something's gone wrong, or they want to start a nonprofit, it's not going to break the bank. Why not just do it?
And second, what has working with so many different organizations and people taught you about the interconnectedness of community, Suraj?
Sure. I think that's a good one. I think we'll have a clip for some silence here. That's a really good
that's
question.
Fine. Think about it.
Yeah. Interconnectedness. One thing I have seen is that there are lots of different bar associations, and they all pride themselves on, sometimes I should say, having one distinguishing feature. And I've been fortunate enough to be a part of many of them. And what I will say is that though they do showcase, their differences, it really all does come down to what each attorney has inside them. When you join, let's say, a bar association, it's because you have that inner calling, like, okay, I want to connect with people, whether it's to learn from them, whether it's to socialize with them, you name it. But I think everyone has that same urge. And I think as much as we sometimes try to separate ourselves into different buckets of types of attorneys and practice areas, I think we do all just come down to that same similar mindset and hopefully just trying to do right by our clients.
Yeah, I think to me the interconnectedness comes down to, at the end of the day, we as lawyers are problem solvers. That is what we do. People
Absolutely.
only come to us with problems. Think about it. When's the last time you had a client called you that says, hey, Suraj, just want to let you know we're killing it over here at the construction firm. It's going great. Don't need you. Just thought we'd call you. You never get phone calls like that, right?
That would simultaneously be the best and worst client, I think, ever.
So Suraj, before we wrap up with the lightning round, if folks are digging what you're selling and they want to get in touch with you and maybe they need somebody up in Maryland, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Sure, you can reach out to me on my website, savlawfirm.com, or you can reach us on any social media platform under the sun. Same handle, it's going to be at savlawfirm.
All right, so we're going to end our time today with what we call the lightning round.
I'm ready.
And it's a series of questions, some serious, mostly not. And you have to give me the first answer that comes to mind. So the absolute opposite of what you tell your clients in depositions.
Right.
You're just going to spat out the first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, now, I knew when I took the bar exam back when the Earth's crust was cooling that I absolutely had failed it. I remember walking out, I think day one was the multi-state, and they were all just multiple choice questions. And I remember my wife asking, how'd you do? And I said, I knew the answer to 3 of them. And I think there were 200 questions. What were your thoughts when you left the patent bar exam, when you were walking out of the testing facility? Did you think I crushed it, or maybe that was just a great thing to do, but I'll never do it again?
I think I literally said the words "I crushed it" as soon as I walked out of there. I called my family up, and that's exactly what I said.
That's gutsy, dude.
Yeah.
Good on you.
Yeah, I think I just know when an exam has really, I guess, screwed me up, and then when I think I've nailed it. So, yeah, made the calls.
Good for you. What does a lawyer who is also an engineer do for hobbies?
Oh, man. Well, I love playing video games. I say that, but I haven't played them in so long, just with the practice kind of booming. That's definitely up there. My wife and I play tennis pretty regularly, so that's up there as well.
Okay, tennis versus pickleball. Hot sports opinion. Where do you come down?
Oh, man, I'm a tennis guy, but I haven't played enough pickleball, I think. I got to get into it a little bit more.
Well, first off, I think you're far too young to play pickleball because everybody I see playing is 172.
All right.
And one of the things that people that are tennis purists tell me is the sound just drives them nuts with pickleball. If you weren't running your own law firm, Suraj, what would your dream job be and why?
My dream job.
Dream job. Anything you wanted.
I think, before ever getting into the legal world, I would say engineering, but if that's a cheat answer, I think I would say a singer. I used to do a lot of singing back in the day, and that was something I just haven't kept up with.
Get out of town. So if there's a party and there's a karaoke, are you going to bust out your favorites?
Why not? Got to get up there.
If you weren't, you threw me with the singing. I'm sorry. I thought of all the stuff I thought you were going to say. What current show or series are you binge watching?
Oh man, right now actually, my wife and I just watched this show called Paradise on Hulu. Okay. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
No, tell.
It's a thriller show about. Actually, I was told I shouldn't say anything about it when I was recommended, or they shouldn't tell me anything when I was recommended. I think I'll do the same. I'll tell your audience, just know it's a thrilling show. Every episode's kind of a crazy twist, and just get into it. It's on Hulu.
Okay, are they all freestanding, or is there a story arc?
There is a story arc. Yep, it's just one season out right now.
Okay, good. So you're obviously a smart guy. Obviously,
I appreciate that.
What is the one? Well, it's true. What is the one thing you never saw coming or never thought of as you opened your own law firm?
The amount of time I would spend doing administrative work, invoicing and doing intake calls, that is not what I expected at all.
What is AI going to do for your area of the law in the next 2 to 5 years?
In the next 2 to 5 years, that's an interesting time frame because I think that's really when we'll see it develop. I give a lot of talks actually on AI and the law. So right now I think it's still in its infancy, but I could definitely see it, drafting these patent applications and doing quick research and getting me the exact answers I need when I input my client's proposed invention, and it tells me, okay, these are some items that might be problematic.
So I heard AI described one time as an incredibly smart 3-year-old who will lie to your face with full conviction.
That's a great way to put it. I mean, yeah, right now with the LLMs, the large language models we have, that's really all it is. It's stringing together these lines of text that may or may not be accurate, but, they are getting smarter every day, I think.
Favorite legal movie and why?
Favorite legal movie? I think, oh man, I'm going to say My Cousin Vinny. I know
okay, that's amazing.
Classic,
no, that's amazing.
So My Cousin Vinny is a hysterical movie about a small town lawyer who gets a bit over his head, and it's a great laugh. But I feel like that's, the classic one everyone always says.
You know what? How many times have you been to a CLE and if someone plays a clip, here's my observation. If you're going to go to a CLE and there's a lawyer up talking about something, you're going to see clips from 1 or 2 movies. One is a few good men, right? And the second is My Cousin Vinny.
You got it. Always those two. But they're both great. They're fantastic.
They're classic. And you can use My Cousin Vinny for any CLE topic you want to talk about and just nails it. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Suraj Vyas, thank you so much for being on the show. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. It was an absolute pleasure.
This is Mike Bassett with Legal Grounds. Be easy, everybody.
Legal Grounds was written, recorded, and produced by Dust Devil Press. To learn more about today's guest, and for links to the topics and materials discussed, please check out our show notes. For more information on Mike Bassett, visit thebassettfirm.com. Questions, topic ideas, and guest suggestions can be emailed to legalgrounds@thebassettfirm.com.